attention. Let's take a look and talk about the outcomes. And then I want you to see everything here. You can come take a look at the carcasses, take a look at the cuts, ask a gazillion questions. The rest of this time is for your learning. So let's start with the handout. Okay, on the left, this is just exactly how they're set up. The black cow, the black steer, the longhorn steer. Same order. So the black heifer, her shrunk live weight, that's a 4% pencil shrink. Her shrunk live weight was 1526. Her carcass was 988 and a half. She dressed 64.8, a little better than industry average. That's not unexpected, particularly given how fat she is. The fatter an animal is, the better they dress. The heavier muscled an animal is, the better they dress. So 64.8. Then the next one probably took you by surprise. Low utility. Okay, so she's a cow. Not only was she a cow, she was a bred cow. We took a 2-trimester fetus out of her. So I called her E100, which is the oldest ossification possible. My grad students called her E90. We're splitting hairs. She's an old cow. Old cow. She's actually pretty good looking for an old cow, though. Oh, yeah. She had all her teeth, minus what had been worn off. And her yield grade was 5.41. She's a fat old cow.
Why would we call her a heifer then?
I threw you a curveball. You did, but you didn't argue. That's a good-looking cow. Yes, sir.
How would she finish? Grass, or if she was a cow and bred?
So she came out of a feedlot. I don't know how long she was in the feedlot, because she definitely has yellow fat color, beta carotene. She's been on green lush grass. To wash this out, it's going to take more time. Definitely. Great question. Yes, sir. Okay. So we'll go to the steer and then the longhorn, black steer, longhorn, and then we're going to go down the list. Okay, black steer right here. This is our black steer. 1284 was his shrunk weight. 877 carcass. Look at his carcass yield. 68.2. Fantastic. Biggest reason he's got a fantastic yield, how much gut do you see there? None. You put a 4% pencil shrink on that? Yeah, he probably didn't have 4% in his stomach anyway. This guy was, he was trim. He was not overly fat, but he didn't have fill. Fill is the single biggest factor in dressed yield. So, 68.2, low choice. Me and the grad students argued a little bit. They're a little more conservative than I am. I'm fighting for the packer, because we kind of are the packer. I call it average choice. The grad students called it low choice. Yield grade 2.68. So, low choice, yield grade 2.68. You might also write down the word commodity choice. Low choice and commodity choice are synonyms of each other. People use different terms. Okay, the longhorn steer. He was a beauty, right? Meatball, meat machine, right? Maybe not. So the longhorn steer weighed 1012 after a 4% pencil shrink. He almost was a lightweight discount, but he wasn't. 600 and a half. We'll take it. We'll take it. Right there, 600 and a half. He dressed 59.3. There's just not a lot here. Not a lot of anything. And his gut feel was such a large proportion of his body mass. Yep. And he graded select. And this, me and the grad students didn't agree on this one either. They kind of gave him the benefit of the doubt. I think they had to squint real hard to see anything here. I called him Trace's 80, Dan. They called him slight 0. So we're splitting hairs. You might have to give us a third opinion on that.
So Trace's 80 would have made him
standard.
Yeah, that's what I call it.
Yeah, and the grad students are like, you know, they're squinting over there. I think they got a little fuzz in their eye to get slight 0, but that's what they called it. So let's see what Dan says. Remember, I said Trace's 80. The grad student said slight 0.
It's no doubt it's in traces.
Thank you.
I might call it traces 60.
60, okay, see? Dan agrees with me. The grad students were very forgiving. But I let them do it so that I wasn't biased. And then yield grade 183. Okay, so here, and let me give you the logic of why I picked him out. So I picked him out to be a yield grade 1. That was the goal. I picked him out to be a yield grade 3. I was close, 268. And I picked her out to be a yield grade 4. She's a 5. This is a bonus right here, folks. And the pregnancy was a bonus as well because the students are like, oh, wow. They loved it. So this was, again, I'm picking out yield grades. Visually, that's the easiest thing to appraise. So that's what I did. 1, 3, 4. And I got 1, 2, 5. It kind of worked out. Similar math. All right, so now let's go down the sheet. And I've got lots of data here. I don't want to talk about all of it, but I want you to process it and ask questions. So notice we have round, then loin, then rib, then chuck, then brisket, plate, flank, and then trim. In parentheses, next to each of the primals, I put down in these 3 carcasses how much weight each primal accounted for and the value that each primal accounted for. So the rib, the round. So I'm going to start right here. Round. So we have an inside round, and this is on black steer. Inside round on black steer. I only have 1, so I multiplied it by 2. If I multiply this by 2, I get 39.6 pounds. So this is half of that. And then outside round. And then eye of round. And then knuckle. So these 4 pieces here make up these 4 items right here. Same on that table, same on that table. So if I take those 4 subprimals, that's 13% of the weight and 14% of the dollars. Okay, that's what that means in parentheses. Those 4 pieces, 13% of the weight, 14% of the dollars. Then you can go down to loin. 9% of the weight, 20% of the dollars are in the loin. So in the loin, we're going to have things like a strip loin, Kansas City strip steaks, or New York strip steaks. We're going to have a tenderloin fillets. Okay? We're going to have a sirloin steaks. We're going to have a picanha. Anybody ever eaten at a Brazilian steakhouse? Picanha, the house specialty, sits right there. We're going to have a tri-tip. Anybody ever eaten at a meal in California? You probably had tri-tip somewhere in California. And we have bottom sirloin flap somewhere, right there, bottom sirloin flap, and a bottom sirloin ball tip. Somewhere on this table is a bottom sirloin ball tip, right there. So, all of those cuts come together in the loin value. All right, then we go down, rib, 6% of the weight, 15% of the money. So in the rib, we get 3 things fundamentally. Ribeye roll, back ribs, and rib lifter meat. And rib lifter meat becomes chicken fried steak primarily. You see it here called rib blade meat. Move on down to the chuck. 8% of the weight, 11% of the dollars. In the chuck, we get a chuck eye roll. I'm a native of Delhart. Anybody ever gone to the world's largest free barbecue? We put thousands of pounds of chuck eye roll in the ground. Yep. Anybody ever had a flat iron steak? Okay. Those of us that are old enough, again, not this crowd, remember when you cut it this way, top blade steaks. Well, now we cut them this way. We fillet it like a fish and sell flat iron steaks. Same muscle, cut differently. Shoulder arm roast, also a chuck cut. Mock tender roast, not tender. That's That's why it's called the mock tender roast. All right? All right? Petite tender. This is a tender cut, about the size of a pork tenderloin. Makes a great grilling item. And then we can have some chuck short ribs as well. So you add all that up, and you can see what the chuck's worth. Go down one. I put the brisket and the plate and the flank together. And I do that because these top four, the round, the loin, the rib, and the chuck, there are four major primals on the top side of an animal. And then we have the brisket, the plate, and the flank as our lower 1/3 of the animal. We put them together. We're all from Texas, so we know what a brisket is, right? And I as I get students in from other states, they're like, "Ooh, brisket," like it's some novelty. But as you travel, you'll notice that in other states, you might not be able to get brisket. Go to a very northern or northeastern or northwestern state, and you go to the grocery store and you're looking for a brisket, and you're going to find none. And you're even going to have people tell you, "Brisket? Well, we dropped that in the grinder." Oh, but they do. It's a very regional food, and we live in that region. It's a big thing here. But you'll go to places where that's not a thing. Okay, and we've got flank steak.
What they make the brisket into hamburger meat?
Yes, sir. Yeah. In the north. Yeah. You know, places, I won't go there. Anyway. And inside and outside skirt meat. Okay. Inside and outside skirt meat. I want to tell you that we're in a very unique place right now. You probably wouldn't believe me if I couldn't show you the details. This outside skirt meat is worth more per pound ungraded than this is as choice. Ungraded outside skirt has a greater demand per pound than choice tenderloin. Our demand for fajita meat is strong. Strong. So, brisket, plate, flank, 5% of the weight, 9% of the dollars. Now, go to the bottom. Whoa. 60% of the weight and 31% of the value is not on the top of the table. It's down here on the bottom. Trim. I got bags and bags of trim down here on the bottom. All the ground beef that we sell in this country. Taco Bell, Taco John's, Taco Villa, Taco whatever, McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, hot dogs this, bologna that. We have a huge demand for trim. Our demand for trim is so big, we can't meet our demand, so we buy trim from other countries. We bring it in. About $2.8 billion worth we buy every year because we don't produce enough here. We're bringing it in from other countries. Lean trim, predominantly to go with our fat. So, value is everywhere in this critter. Now, let's go down to the next piece below trimmings. Does the fat have value? Yes, it does. Fat has a value. So I got $102 down there, $69 here, and he didn't have a lot of fat, $16 of trim fat over here, right? Does the bone have any value? Technically, yes, but not much. Again, this side of the room, would kind of remember back when you had a camera that, not this, that we didn't used to do that. So the old film cameras, the gelatin that they were on was made of bone. Bone used to have a value. Then after our BSE event, the value that it didn't have got worse. And so today, bone is a very minimal value. Bone fundamentally becomes meat and bone meal, and we sell it to chicken farmers, chicken producers in the southeast. So East Texas, Arkansas, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, that way. That's where bone meal goes today, and it's just minimal value per animal. Okay, move on down. You'll see muscle to bone ratios and muscle to fat ratios. You know, as fat as this heifer cow was, she has a great muscle to bone ratio. It's fantastic. She wasn't that big and tall and framey. She didn't have that much excess bone. She was a very moderate sized cow. She has a great muscle to bone ratio. Her muscle to fat ratio is a little bit lackluster. Only 3.5 pounds of muscle for every pound of fat. The black steer in the middle, he's the winner, 4.4 both ways. And then this critter, his muscle to bone ratio is really lackluster, but his muscle to fat ratio doesn't look that bad because he's so trim. He has no back fat, like no back fat. Yeah. Okay, now this is a ranching conference. I don't want to make anybody mad, but I did calculate value 3 ways. So on the live value, if we had paid for these cash out of a feedlot, yesterday's market was $1.23. That's what I paid for a truckload of fats that I bought yesterday, so I used $1.23. So here we go, $1.23. They're worth $11, $18, and $1,600 here. Technically, $18.77.47, $15.79.91, and $12.44.56, left to right. Then if I sold them on a carcass grid, so selling them based on their premiums and discounts, her value is only $13.57 because she's a what? She's a hard bone. Yeah, so she takes the hard bone discount. She takes the yield grade 5 discount. And she takes a little bit of heavy discount. So it's not real pretty over there at $13.57.21. You clearly want to sell her live. How much did the packer make on her? And that's selling cow meat. That's selling her for what she is. She's worth $2,600 in today's market to the packer. Selling cow meat. Okay, so I go over here to the steer. He's worth $15.79.91 live. He's worth $17.04 on the grid. The clear winner is to sell him on the grid. He's better than average quality, better than average yield, better than average dressed yield. Winner, winner right here. Sell him on the grid. Sell a whole pen of them. You're about $121 advantage over cash if you sell him on a grid. And then the packer is not quite at $1,100 over that on him. $27.99.51 is what his value is to our major packers. And then I go over one row to this guy. He's worth $12.44.56 live. He takes a discount for being select, and he gets a premium for being yield grade 1. Nothing on the weight by a half a pound. So he's worth $1,030 if you sold him in the meat on a grid. But at the packer, even selling a select carcass, he's worth $1,791. Okay. Ask questions. What do you want to know more about? How can I help you?
So I don't understand how you get the live value on a cow at $1,877.
Okay, pull your calculator out. Pull your calculator out. Calculator. Go to calculator. And 1526, her weight, times 1.23.
So you bought her then as a fat, like a fat steer?
Out of a feedlot.
Okay. But in all reality, she'd have gone to Cavaness and brought 72 cents a pound.
Would she?
Well, I mean, she should have.
She was in a feedlot.
She should have.
But there's a whole bunch of that happens. A whole bunch.
Interesting.
So I'm going to go back to one of my answers to Andy's question. You got to do what works for you. In your environment, you can produce an Akushi calf, and as long as you can produce it for less than what you're getting, you got some margin built into it. I know of producers in other parts of the country, and I'm going to use South Texas, South Florida as two examples, where it's so darn hot for so much of the year, the only thing that survives is a very high percentage Brahman that has almost no chance of grading any better than Select. And so quality really isn't an option. And so now it's all about as many pounds as possible for those producers. You agree or you disagree?
Oh, I agree. I'm from Florida.
Okay.
That's all I ever saw in the store was
Yeah,
Florida.
yeah. So a lot of the guys that run the Seminole tribe herd are friends of mine. And I've done short courses for them, and most of their cattle end up Select or low choice. And they're trying to run a Brangus program, but they're in, some of their biggest worry is, can the cow fight off the gators? I mean, that's a concern you don't have. It's a different world. So you got to do what works at the ranch level for you, and then find the best market for you. For some producers, it is having a cow that survives the environment and then sell pounds. For you, it's clearly not. You've got a quality outcome, go for it. Sell quality pounds and get paid a premium and love doing it.
So in your case, your cell comes to, it's called the middle meat, just like the, might show them where the strip loin
Yep.
comes from, strip loin.
So that would be right there. It's the same muscle. We just cut it in half because this was the style that won over in Chicago in the 1800s. New York had a slightly different style, and San Francisco had a slightly different style, but the Chicago style of cutting is what won out. And the tenderloin is back about there.
On the inside.
The tenderloin, this end actually hooks to the femur of the animal, and this end hooks to the vertebrae under here. And this, let me do a little meat science 101 real quick. Most people think this is tender because it's not used. That's the most common answer I get. This muscle is used every time the animal takes a step. It's a very highly used muscle. It's tender because we hang the carcass by its Achilles heel. Remember, this end is hooked to the femur, this end is hooked to the backbone, and it's super stretched because that's not a natural position for the animal to be in ever in life. And so we just stretched it. In life, you're watching a steer or heifer or pig or horse walk away from you. The tenderloin is the muscle that pulls the free swinging leg forward to take the next step. So every time they pull the leg forward, the tenderloin is the muscle that did that. They use it all the time. That value is built into the bottom number, but I did not show it independently in interest of time. I wasn't sure how today was going to run. So hide is the single most valuable piece of that byproduct. Right now, the average byproduct value is $15.25 per 100 pounds of live animal. $15.25 per 100 pounds of live animal. The hide's the biggest piece of that. About $50 is what a raw hide brings. Not raw hide, but raw hide. So it gets salted, let me back up. At 9 places in America, we turn a raw hide into a blue chrome hide, which has a much longer shelf life. One of those is in Amarillo, Texas. Another one is in Cactus. 2 of these 9 are in the Panhandle. And then there's 7 others around the country where you can take a raw hide and make something more valuable out of it. You had about $25 of value per hide by doing that. Now 50 becomes 75. Everybody else in the country takes that hide, they salt it, they fold it, they put it on a pallet, they smash it very firm, and then they put them on a container, put that container on a ship. Most of those go to China. Some of those go to Indonesia. Some of those go to Spain. And the reason is a lot of the hide tanning work is done overseas is because the environmental regulations are less stringent. Some of the chemicals used in tanning are pretty noxious, and our EPA is on very tight control of that work. That's why only 9 of those exist in America. Okay, after that, we got a tongue. By and large, tongue goes to Japan. The Japanese culture pays a premium for American fed beef tongue. It's about $13 to $15 per tongue, wholesale value. That's 50,000 pound load quantities. You get over there, it's worth like $30 a tongue. And they'll thin slice it, dip it in the hot pot. That's not the right name for it, but that's what it is. What do you call it? What do they call their hot pot? But it's a similar thing. It's like hot beef broth with their chopsticks. They love American beef tongue. Livers have very minimal value, $3 a head. They go to Egypt almost strictly. Tripe, so 4-compartment stomach. We really only sell 3 compartments, the rumen, reticulum, and omasum. They go to Mexico by and large. The abomasum is a very thin market. What does get sold goes to Asia. The large intestine has a very, very thin market for some old world traditional beef bologna casing. Small intestine more or less goes to Mexico and is sold as tripas. You can have a tripas burrito. Kidneys mostly go to pet food. Lungs mostly go to pet food. Spleen mostly goes to pet food. Sweetbreads have a small, minor market as an appetizer. What else? What am I missing here? Yeah, there's some market for bones, smoked bones for dog treats. It's pretty minor though. Yes, sir. The head. In most packers, the head is considered an SRM because it has the brain and the spinal cord in it. So it gets tossed into, they'll pull the cheek meat off, and cheek meat gets sold as barbacoa, and then the head goes to meat and bone meal, rendering.
You might talk about orders, pack your own.
Yeah, so let's say for today's fab, a packer, Tyson, Cargill, JBS, National, they're going to have a break sheet, and it's going to start with quality. So typically, they're going to start breaking prime in the morning. First thing in the morning, 5:30 in the morning, they'll break prime. And then they'll move into CAB or their branded programs, sterling silver, something like that. And they typically kind of work their way down in grade throughout the day. And they're probably running something in low choice when they break for A shift to B shift. And then B shift is finishing choice, getting into select, and they're going to end the night with no roll, dark cutter, 30 plus. And they do that because of skill level. Typically, the better skilled, longer term employees are on the morning or A shift, and the lesser skilled newbies are on the night shift. And you don't want to have a bunch of number 2 product with your highest quality. If you're going to have any mistakes, you want it at the lower quality end. Now within each of those quality breaks, then they're going to have a make sheet. And it says, okay, we need 480 cases of ribeye roll. And the problem is it never pans out to be an equal cut. And so the fab managers are looking at the make sheet and they're saying, okay, the minimum item is this 480 cases of ribeye roll that are boneless. So we got to make all of that. And then the make sheet says we need 120 cases of bone-in rib roll. And so they'll tell an employee, I want you to mark a carcass with a perfect split, for instance. And so they're looking here at so that's a good example. So this is kind of a missplit here because, and this is kind of a missplit here, you should be able to see all of the bones on a perfect split like this, whereas we got a little bit of missplit here and we got a more missplit there. But we were letting students do this in labs, so it is what it is. Yeah, awesome. Yeah. Fantastic. So you're looking for a good split. And somebody's got the sheet, and they're going to, like at Tyson, they use pink, kind of pink dye on a roller. and they'll come along and they'll mark a mark here and they'll make a mark there, and that tells the fab team bone in. So don't put that one on the saw. And when they see that pink mark on it, they just kick it down the line. They don't even saw it. And then everybody else knows what that means, and so that product goes out the door bone in, whether it be a short loin or a bone-in rib roll. And then you get to the point where, well, we need more short loins and less bone-in rib rolls, so they stop marking here, but they keep marking here, or vice versa. They stop marking here and they keep marking here. And so they're trying to manage how to break these things at a rapid pace. Rapid pace.
So do they do tomahawks? That's just a special deal, because there's not many of those.
There's not many of those at all, no.
Is that a special pack, just
Yeah, I don't know any of the major four that even make like a tomahawk. They might do it, but I'm a bit skeptical, because you got to change the whole main brake to make a tomahawk. I've never seen them do that at a major packer.
So, in Dennis, Texas, just Walmart last year.
Okay?
During the pandemic,
Unlikely, because you're changing the whole main brake when you go from a traditional rib roll to a special cut like that. Because you're leaving, to make a tomahawk, instead of breaking it where you normally would, you're leaving part of the plate on to make a long, fancy rib, and make it a showstopper. They got to buy on something. All right, and the cruise ships weren't buying them. Yep. So they got to buy somebody making them. The other thing that could be, Hadley, is they were in the freezer somewhere. Some stacked up in a freezer. They got to buy, thaw them out. We'll sell them. So, for instance, okay, let's say Amarillo. They get stunned, killed. They're off the kill floor in about 35 minutes. They're in the hot box for 30 hours right now on average. Then they go to grading, and between grading and cut is about 12 to 24 hours. And the reason there's a time gap is you're waiting for things to stack up. So you need to get enough cattle stacked up so that you can run for a long time. Because what you don't want to do is change labels all the time. So you want to get a big stack of prime so that you can run for an hour or two. And then you switch, because when you switch, you're telling everybody, okay, take a break. And everybody might be 600, 700, 800 people. Take a break for a few minutes. We're going to change all the bags, all the boxes, all the labels from prime to CEB. And then you're going to do it again to choice. And then you're going to do it again to select. Then you're going to do it again to no roll. And every one of those is extremely inefficient. And you got 600, 700, 800 people standing around. And so you want to minimize brake changes as much as possible. So you're going to stack it up. Then after that, you go to fab. It gets boxed. It gets over to the warehouse, and probably a max of 2 days in the warehouse. Max. And I say that because there's more cattle coming right behind it. And so it's in and out. And so all of the aging that occurs in this country is in this form, in a box, either in a semi or a distribution center somewhere. It's at the plant 3 days and gone. I think it's great, but I'm a little biased. What are my views on it? So it worked, is in short. So we took a carcass, a steer carcass that was prime 1, and we took a heifer carcass that was prime 1, and we cloned the carcass, made the dead live again, crossbred those, and then we have offspring of that. And I can tell you that in our first generation clone, we equaled top sires in multiple breeds. And our clone-clone cross, we've superseded the top Angus sire in America. But I'm biased. So we know how to grow an animal higher quality, higher yielding, faster. We're doing another test like that now.
will that be commercial?
No, never. Well, I shouldn't say never. Highly unlikely. You can clone an animal to salvage genetics that you don't want to lose. you will never clone for food production. It's too inefficient. Much too inefficient. I need to put all this up back in the classroom first, and then I tell you what, just hang around in the atrium. I'll come out and grab you once we're done, and we'll take a tour if you'd like.